Main shot. I might as well come to the main shot while I'm waiting. Ah, just wait for more people to find this stream. It took me long enough. Hopefully this one doesn't crash. I think part of the problem was OBS kept on bugging me. Would you like to do an update as soon as I was opening it, ready to start working? And then I would say, remind me later. And then ADHD, I would never remember to do it automatically. And so it would keep on asking me right when I was in the middle of doing something. So I think that's what the problem was, is that I wanted to add updates, and I didn't want it to. That was super annoying. Super, super annoying. Because I can't even go back, I don't think, to the other live stream to see what the comments were, at least, so that I can, if I do that, go there. Yeah, it takes a while for the comments the chat to show up. So I can't even go back and check the chat to maybe answer some of the questions that were in the chat, unfortunately. How's the audio, too? Because when OBS updates, it likes to mess up things like audio. Oh, so annoying, so annoying. At least it happened right when I was done a segment. Like that, you know, timing there at least was good. Okay, audio seems okay. Just super frustrating. I was on a roll, ready to go, had so much more to cover, and now I'm like, I think I want to skip the rest of the Gaza stuff and get on with the other Canadian news and whatnot. Yeah, I'll have to send a tweet out. Oh, so frustrating. Please like and share this stream to get it back into people's attention. Profile. I'm not even seeing it on my Twitter feed when I tweeted out earlier. Of course, Twitter's not working right now. Because of course not. Sorry about that. So, like and share the stream if you can share it to Twitter. Please share it to Twitter. It's not working for me. And if everyone wants to put in the chat the same comments you put into the other chat so I can answer them while we're waiting for people to come over, that would be great. And then I can answer some of those questions that were there. But for those of you who are just refinding this, it looks like I have been putting off updating OBS because it kept on asking me if I would like to update it right when I was opening it to start working. And that's not when I like to update it. But ADHD, I kept on forgetting to do it any other time. So we're getting close to the same number that was over there. That's like almost half the first hour just trying to figure that out, unfortunately. Yeah, like I wish there was a way to keep the other stream going while I was figuring this out so I could at least put a message out there, but I don't know how that would have been possible. But at least I got a good old rant in there about everything that was happening. At least I hoped it stopped at the end of the segment and not halfway in between. From the looks of the comments, that's what I was thinking, and I also got a pop-up. That's how I even knew it stopped. A little pop up on my desktop saying that I've been disconnected. So frustrating, so frustrating. Did it cut off at the end of that segment at least? Right when I was starting to like go to chat? Can you, do people know if it started then? And thank you everyone for refinding this. So Shamigli is saying yes, so I'm assuming that's yes, I was able to finish that segment before it cut off. And thank you again, everyone who's coming back over to this one. Yeah, I'm not necessarily good with tech myself. Nina Canadian, I've had to learn to be decent with it because I'm usually on my own. So it usually requires me to Google things, and I'm pretty good at problem solving that way, but it might take me a while because it took me a while to just figure out that it was the updates that were the issue. So I've learned how to Google, and if it's a program that I get familiar with, like let's say it's Excel, I can figure that program out. If it's Photoshop, I can figure that program out. But when it's all this online streaming stuff, I don't know enough about it to really know, aha, that's what's going on, and figure it out. Luckily, I have some really smart friends when it comes to computers. Unfortunately, I can't just, call them up because they have lives and they're busy and all that sort of stuff. Let's get this out of my ear hole while I'm waiting. Drink some coffee to help me calm down. Okay, so at least the timing, Morbius Dragon is also saying that it cut off when I went to chat. That's like really good timing there. Because I saw one question that I knew I was going to want to answer from Coffee is Necessary, but I don't see them in the chat yet. Just saying that they're a fan of me and fan of TYT, and I just want to say like that's a good thing. Like I don't want TYT to go away. I still think they do a lot of good. It's just with a certain few issues, they're horrible. So I don't get down on people who are still fans of TYT. It's just I know they've crossed the line for me personally, especially with the trans issues and whatnot. So I can't support them at all. And somebody else was noticing when we were playing that video that I am not subscribed to them, and no, I'm not. But every now and then, one of their videos will pop up in my recommends, and sometimes, like that one that I covered, it'll catch my eye. And then I'll see how much I want my blood pressure to go up, which is sometimes a good thing because I usually suffer from low blood pressure. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for hopping back over again. BCatK platforming glebe is wildly irresponsible. On this subject, when it comes to what's happening, yeah. Like I remember once I gave him a little bit of credit because his take on trans issues is generally really bad. But he did show growth on one of them because he said something really ignorant in one show. And I guess a lot of people had piled on him. And it's something about, trans people in sports. And I guess a lot of people reached out to him, piled on him or whatever, and educated him, and he actually accepted it. Like he accepted that he was wrong, and he accepted what people were telling him. And so I thought, okay, there's hope. Like he's still really bad on it, but there's hope. He's showing some growth. But when it comes to what's happening with Israel and Palestine, it is just there's no hope. He's beyond hope. His attitude and everything, because trying to find ways to justify a genocide by like even just trying to claim it's not a genocide. There's no two sides to this at all. It's just so gross. But, I still think, Anna still has good takes. Jenk still has good takes. So I don't get down on anyone for still being a fan of TYT. Um, I would just say at a bare minimum, though, maybe just watch the clips and don't support the show to kind of make a statement about some of the directions that some of their main co-hosts or main hosts are going. Like, I feel kind of sad in a way that I haven't even watched the damage report in months and months and months. And I really like John, but I can't bring myself to watch it. Like, I guess part of me feels like I really lost out on another entire community by cutting it out of my life, but I had to make a statement for one thing, and also for my own mental health, because it was upsetting me too much at times. So I don't know if coffee is necessary. Pops back in chat. Can somebody let him? I don't know if it's. I don't know the gender of coffee is necessary, so let them know. I addressed their comment from the other chat. Still need to calm down. I was ready to scream. Thinking, you know what? I did my eyeshadow, my eye makeup, nailed it. Outfit, nailed it for a half hour of recording. I was like, just so ready to, ah. So calming down, calming down. Just catching up the chat to see if there's anything I need to address. Shade Dragon, coffee has two genders, caffeinated or uncaffeinated. Well, you know what? Mine also has hot chocolate in it. So, makes it a little bit different, I think. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, if coffee is necessary comes back into chat, just let them know. I address their comment. Because I don't want people who is a fan of both to feel like I'm singling them out or anything when I talk smack about TYT. You know, I talk about, I call them out when it's necessary. I call them out when it's due. And unfortunately, I haven't been watching them enough to be like, okay, now I can give credit to them for this. Because usually it's only the negative stuff that tends to catch my eyes or pop up in my feed. Okay, shall we start this again? Although I did want to point out a video. One that I wasn't going to go over because it's way too long. So Owen Jones, I saw this video on Twitter thinking, oh no, it's on Twitter. And I know a lot of people aren't on Twitter, but then I found actually he has his own YouTube channel. And that's where the video was actually from. So this video is a half hour long. I really recommend you go check it out. Owen Jones is just amazing on this. Plus, his accent just makes listening to him so much easier and nicer. I'm a sucker for that accent. I had linked it in the description box of the other video, so you can go there to find the link, or you can just Google YouTube it from here. So yeah, go check out his video. This one here, how Israel could be stopped by South Africa. It's overwhelmingly genocide case explained. Really good video. Strongly recommend this one for people who are interested. If they ever want to, go up against Ben Glebe. I would love to see Owen Jones and Ben Glebe get into a conversation, actually. That would be interesting. I would really like to see that. Okay. Let's get back into the news. Okay, so I had some other kind of Gaza stuff, Israel Zionist stuff that I was going to go over, but I think that just knocked the air out of me, having to reconnect and stuff. So I'm just going to move on to what I had planned next. And what is next is all Canadian news. So
today in Canadian news.
yes, today in Canadian news. Our healthcare is in shambles. Absolute shambles across the country. And again, I don't think people are really understanding the gravity of how bad it's getting. It's one of those things you don't know how bad it is until you're actually trying to get the healthcare you need. I have been fortunate in that whenever I've gone to Emerge, and Emerge, when I say Emerge, I guess a couple of Americans didn't actually know what I was talking about. I am talking about like the emergency room, the ER. We tend to call it Emerge or ER. Like it still gets called ERs around here, but I don't know if it's more common to just call it Emerge. I have been seen eventually. Sometimes I've had to wait 6 hours. And when you're waiting 6 hours just to find out you had food poisoning, it's an excruciating 6 hours. It really is. But I've at least been seen. It's getting worse. And people are literally dying because they can't get the health care that they need in this country. When they go to Emerge, the wait times are just becoming ridiculous. So there's this video here. Let's get back to my YouTube. There. You see, I have two different screens set up, one for just like regular news articles and web pages to share, but then this one for the YouTubes, I have done up all nice and fancy so that you can see this nice and clearly, you know, the name of it, the channel, all that sort of stuff, and then you get to see it full screen. I did that just for all you guys. So that's nice. Okay, I did it because I'm a little bit obsessive with placing things right. So this one is Quebecers asked to avoid emergency rooms. Can you imagine that? You know, just being asked, you know, oh, if you're a medical emergency, don't go to the emergency room. Just avoid it if you can.
Is asking the public to avoid going to hospital emergency rooms if they have a respiratory virus because ERs in the province are jamming up again with patients. The province's emergency rooms are currently at 121% capacity. Average occupancy rates in Quebec.
121% occupancy. Wow. That's like really bad. Like really, really bad. Do you know what? That video was from 4 days ago. Quebec at 121% occupancy. 4 days ago. Well, 2 days ago.
Healthcare systems across Canada are starting the new year much.
Quebec ERs operating at 135% capacity. In just 2 days, it went that much worse.
in the same way they ended 2023, under tremendous strain from an influx of patients, with doctors and nurses demanding support and solutions. Emergency rooms in many hospitals are filling up at an alarming rate, and in some cases operating over capacity for days on end. A surge of patients is being driven by the spread of respiratory illnesses like COVID-19, RSV, and the flu.
Yeah, people don't seem to quite understand, but COVID hasn't gone away. And a lot of the time now, people don't, a lot of Canadians don't have a family doctor. They don't have a clinic that they can go to. Even walk-in clinics tend to be, the wait times, if they're lucky, they can get into one, all that sort of stuff. So sometimes people have no other choice but to go to an emergency room to get seen. And, we used to have flu season, which was bad enough and people getting sick. But now it's just virus season because there's all these other viruses, including COVID, which are still, COVID is much more severe than the flu is. And everything just keeps on getting amplified and amplified. And then the cuts that we have to our healthcare system, the loss of nurses, loss of beds, like it is just, we're reaching a breaking point.
Situation made even more difficult to navigate by acute staffing shortages at many hospitals. Albert Delatella is on this story for us. He joins us now. So Albert, good morning. Give us a sense of how bad Canada's healthcare strain is right now.
Good morning, Hillary. As you say, those respiratory illnesses and COVID really adding to the strain, and on top of the staffing shortages, they really create a challenging situation for hospitals across the country. And we do have some numbers to show you out of Quebec that just shows how that province is experiencing this. The occupancy rate there in their emergency rooms as of today sits at 135%. So that is the highest yet this season, and it's well above, of course, what would be considered full. If you look at the rates over the past 7 days, over the past week, you can see them inching up from 111% on December 27th, going from bad to worse, really, across that week. One Montreal nurse.
Yep, just in a few days, from 121 up to 135% over capacity. Like, what are we supposed to do?
Keep coming.
He's feeling much better today, but over the Christmas break,
So that was Quebec. Here's Edmonton. Edmonton is in a different province. It's in Alberta. That's a different province than Quebec for the American friends who might not know.
William Sanderson was so sick he had to visit an emergency department.
It was 8 hours in the waiting room and then pretty much 4 hours in the hospital room itself.
Sanderson says the Edmonton area hospital was packed with patients. Across the country in New Brunswick, a similar scene.
Waiting room.
It's pretty bad when I just, when I think about my own situation, how I have been to the ER and thinking to myself, 6 hours isn't that bad. I shouldn't have to be waiting 6 hours to get seen by a doctor in an emergency room. And yet that's part of the issue with it holds people off from going to the emergency room, especially if it hits you at night, whatever it is, because then you're thinking like, okay, is it something that's actually critical that I need to get looked at? Because you're thinking to yourself, how bad is it? Because I have work the next day. If it's not something that needs to be seen, then maybe I can get about what I need to do tomorrow and stuff. But if I go to emerge, then I'm going to be there all night and then I won't be able to be rested. And so, but then sometimes you're just like, do I want to sit around in an emergency room for 6 to 8 hours? So some people, like I've held off going to emergency rooms sometimes because of that.
It was packed. There was people everywhere, all the way down the hall.
A shortage of healthcare workers and a surge in respiratory virus cases are once again bringing the front lines of Canada's health system to its knees.
Every person who waits in one way or another is suffering. I've seen wait times lead directly to people dying, including children. I have seen wait times leading to people lying with fractures for days on end.
Most cities post.
Again, that's in Canada. Our universal healthcare system if you can get seen, you don't necessarily have to pay for it.
ED wait times online. On Wednesday morning, major hospitals in Vancouver and Toronto were listing wait times of over 8 and nearly 7 hours. Calgary and Edmonton's largest hospitals listed between 4 and 6 hours. In Quebec, where emergency departments are tracked by capacity, 17 of the 20 emergency departments in the Montreal area were more than 100% full. 3 of those over 200%.
Wow. 3 hospitals over 200% capacity. And yet, every time the government can, they're cutting our health care. And then they're saying, well, the solution to it is privatization, as opposed to, actually properly funding healthcare to get us more nurses and doctors in hospitals. It is just what the government is doing by cutting the healthcare is leading directly to people dying.
4 years after the start of the pandemic, healthcare workers are still walking away faster than they can be replaced, leaving hospitals understaffed and vulnerable to a surge in patients seen every year because of the flu.
That's why it's so urgent and why we're calling on all of the governments across the country to work really hard to increase class sizes, to promote team-based care so that we can share a lot of the work.
In the short term, doctors say patients can help too by getting vaccinated and using emergency departments only when required. Hospitals are expected to remain very busy for several months to come.
Yeah. So this one is also in New Brunswick. Growing concerns over ER capacity in New Brunswick and how it's busting at the seams. So yet another province. As hospitals throughout New Brunswick are stretched beyond their limits, residents who've recently spent extensive periods inside the province's emergency department are speaking out about their experiences. Don Darling, whose mother recently passed away after being diagnosed with cancer less than a month ago, said despite his mother suffering a health crisis upon her arrival to the Dr. Everett Chalmers Regional Hospital in Fredericton, she wanted to leave due to the chaos of the environment. There are people stacked everywhere. The rooms are full. The healthcare workers are in hyper mode in everything they're doing, he said. Darling said prior to his mother's diagnosis on December 8th, she endured 2 other visits to the hospital. On the first occasion, she left after waiting for 4 hours. Upon her return on December 2nd, during a period of extreme pain, she waited 16 hours before she was seen by a physician. My mom was in immense pain, and I said to my sister, don't let her leave. He said, adding that his mother's diagnosis ended up being considered a pulled muscle. A few days later, she was brought back to the hospital because an ambulance and was diagnosed with cancer. On the day of his mother's passing last week, Darling said he visited the emergency department of the hospital. Busting at the seams, people up and down the hallways, paramedics standing around with their patients because they couldn't hand them off to the system, he said, describing what he witnessed during his most recent visit. Despite the chaotic environment, Darling expressed gratitude for the attention and compassion displayed by his mother's care providers. And so often, a lot of these care providers will be the ones yelled at and found and people getting upset with them when, they're doing the best they can with what they have. They don't have the people power, the supplies, the time needed. And I can't imagine what it would be like trying to, be a nurse, be a doctor in those environments, seeing so many people, and you get 5 minutes to diagnose them or something of that sort. You don't get to look after them the way that you want to. And then in Ontario, hospital staff overwork, supports from the province needed, Ontario union says. Hospital workers are buckling under the pressure of heavy workloads largely brought about by a staffing crisis, an Ontario union said Wednesday as it urged the province to do more to support those working in the healthcare system. CUPE, Ontario's Council of Hospital Unions, said Wednesday that understaffing is taking a toll on the mental health of its members, who include registered practical nurses, personal support workers, and clerical staff. A recent survey of more than 750 members indicated 2 in 5 workers have contemplated leaving their jobs, and a similar amount dread going to work, the union said. And a lot of this is directly because of what Doug Ford has done. He put through a bill that limited how much, that suppressed their wage increases to 1% a year. He's forced them back to work. He's done so many cuts and has made it so difficult to be a healthcare provider in this province and still afford to live, and making, private options more appealing to them because they get paid better and stuff. And it's purposeful what this government is doing. And then on top of that, we have to deal with the most ignorant fucks out there. So somebody's saying this POS entered a hospital, refused to mask up, and wants a round of applause for it. This is a new level of narcissism. And that's from Jessa and Train with Trish on Twitter. I'll take today as a small win. My dad has been in the hospital here in Kelowna for 4 days. Masks are mandated again, so had avoided a visit until today. I resolved myself to putting the mask on if it meant seeing my dad, but not without a fight. We walked in, they offered a mask. I politely declined. They're mandatory, they said. I don't need a mask, thanks, and I continued on my way. No one stopped me. In fact, an employee goes above and beyond to help me find my dad. As I hand the nurses the homemade food we prepared and ask them to refrigerate, they happily take it, and the doctor also watches on. No mask, no discussion. Today I leave feeling hope. Hope that even the medical staff knows how ridiculous this is, that they are smart enough to help the sick and leave the rest of us alone. Keep standing your ground. Happy New Year. Well, fuck you. Putting other people's lives at risk because you don't want to wear a mask in one of the most logical places to wear a mask. Like, even for your own health, like, you might not go in sick, but if you're not wearing a mask, you might leave the hospital sick because there's a lot of sick people there. There's a lot of vulnerable people there. There's a lot of health staff there that don't want to get sick themselves. And you know what? Chances are they're just being polite to you because they've been down that road too many times where they do confront people and then they get yelled and screamed at and assaulted. So, they have to sometimes just take a different road with it and not confront people about it because they don't want to deal with the unhinged reactions they'll get. This isn't a win. You're not winning anything. What, you think getting viruses is a win? That potentially putting vulnerable people at risk of death is a win? But we have so many people who have been so, like, it just blows my mind that before COVID, people wearing a mask in a hospital was never questioned. In fact, it seems somewhat normal and reasonable. But now all of a sudden, because of COVID, wearing a mask is like the worst personal violation ever. And all of this stuff out there, all of the misinformation, ended up killing a lot of people. The Serfs tweeted this out, and I'm glad that I get to do this one because I know if the Serfs were doing their show today, they would have covered this. So I'm just like poaching their material that they put out there so that I'm going to cover it instead of them. Joe Rogan and Jimmy Dore got anything to say to their surviving audience members? Is Brett Weinstein still railing this stuff for viewers? Hydroxychloroquine could have caused 17,000 deaths during COVID, study finds. Former US President Donald Trump said, "What do you have to lose? Take it." Are any of the people who is spreading the misinformation about this going to own it? Are they going to acknowledge it? Are they ever going to think about the people, their audience, people who turn to them for advice and comfort and help through, the collective trauma everyone was going through with COVID, who they ended up killing because they told them to take this untested treatment because of some study they heard somewhere that somebody once said, as opposed to, actually listening to what the doctors and scientists and professionals have to say. Are any of them going to go on to their shows in front of their millions of people of audience and say, "I'm sorry, I fucked up and it costs lives"? Nobody would die from wearing a mask. So even if that was wrong, nobody, that's the thing. A mask can help people in so many different ways. I still mask up when I go out in public because it's just habit to me now. Has the vaccine killed people? Chances are the answer is yes, considering that 72 quadrillion doses have been put out there. People have allergic reactions, unexpected allergic reactions to things, depending on the person, depending on their body. The Pfizer vaccine makes me very sick for about 48 hours. I was on my ass, really sick. The Moderna, not a problem. Nothing. Not even really a sore arm. So it all depends on the person. So of course, some people probably died from the vaccine, but I guarantee you that vaccine saves so many more lives. But 17,000 people, not all of them were listening to these grifters, these people that are just out there for clicks. Not all of them, but a lot of them. A lot of those lives could have been saved had they not followed that bad advice. And it's just so sickening because, with Joe Rogan, I think he believes it to some extent. He just believes whatever the last person told him, so long as it, confirms his biases. But Jimmy Dore, he knows. He is absolutely grifting. He knows what he's doing. He misled his audience intentionally because it gave him clicks. His numbers skyrocketed as soon as he became anti-vaxxer. It is just beyond sick that they're allowed to get away with this. And as soon as, that people try to correct them or try to take them down for spreading deadly misinformation, then it's oh no, free speech, free speech. And it's we're going back to some things, there aren't two sides to everything. Not everything has two sides. It astonishes me that we live in a world where people just so easily believe stuff, whereas common sense, just plain old common sense would tell you, yeah, wearing a mask when you're sick, good idea. So somehow the right-wing grifting machine out there has removed just plain old common sense from people. The fact that Donald Trump could get people to drink bleach. When common sense would tell you that's probably not a good idea. Like, oh, kind of blows my mind. Let's check and see what's happening in the sandbox. I feel like I'm getting back into the flow. I was like in a really good spot when it crashed the last stream. I was in my groove, I was in my flow, everything was great, and then it got totally turned upside down. Oh, well, it looks like everyone is back. Let's see. My dogs are goth. I can't imagine not having a hospital visit as an option, though. Yeah, and this doesn't take into account the emergency rooms that have literally been closed at times. And one of the articles or videos, I didn't play all of them to the full length, but some of them were saying how the ambulance drivers are just losing their minds because they're sitting there with patients for hours and hours and hours before they can unload them. And it's like literally the next, they're in the ambulance and the next shift comes in and takes over sitting in the ambulance with their patient because there's nowhere to take them. Yeah, and all the ERs are closing, and then if you live in more rural areas, there's not necessarily hospitals nearby that you can get to. So then you might have to travel hours to get to a hospital just to find out that you then have to wait hours or they turn you away, or it's just, again, if my channel can do nothing else, the thing I want it to do the most is just to wake Canadians up to what is happening to our healthcare. It is something that we've loved to brag about. We've loved to kind of, snub our nose at the Americans, to hold it above them like, ooh, we have universal health care. We're so much better than you. When in reality, we don't have universal health care. And if we don't start paying attention to what's happening, then we're going to be no better off than in the States. We're heading in that direction of an American-style healthcare system. And it is just horrible. Shade Dragon, once I had was in an ER for like 8 hours trying to get help for a flare-up of my nerve damage. Yeah. Like again, I've been to the ER and have gotten good help. Got an ultrasound on the spot to check out what was happening with my gallbladder. Medications, things that I needed. But to wait hours and hours and hours for sometimes things you don't know, sometimes things you just, you just want to rule out the worst option so that you can breathe. And then it's like, okay, once you know it's not the worst option, you can go home and deal with it. But yeah. I regularly wait 6 hours whenever I've had to go to the emerge. And there have been times where I'm like, I think I should go and haven't, because I didn't want to deal waiting there that long. Lynn responding to Zero PE, what's weirder is that low moderate income people argue against universal health care. If you have excellent insurance, US healthcare is better. Just don't lose that insurance. Yeah, it traps you to jobs that you might not want or keep, and then if you lose it, then you're SOL. Nina, Canadian, to be honest, this happened many times before. I was held in Ontario Hospital ER hallway in 1989, writhing in pain, sent home. The same hospital saved my life 4 days later. Yeah, it's always had its problems because right from the get-go, we never had universal health care when we got what we call universal health care. There were still issues. There was still a transition period. There were still hospitals that were grandfathered in that, weren't in the public sector the way that we think of them. And there's always going to be times where they're understaffed, where they're overflowing, but, what happens if something else, like in a city that's already over capacity, if a tragedy were to happen? Like, we're fortunate in our areas here, we don't really get earthquakes, but like in BC, if they were to be hit with an earthquake or a tsunami, because they're on the Cascadia fault line, so that's entirely possible. Hmm. Da, 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 da. Okay. Soul Life. I'm against universal health care because I paid off my hospital bill. Yeah. Yeah. The thing is that you don't necessarily need an education at a secondary, like college or university, to survive, but you need health care in order to live. Like, it's. And I'm still, a fan of getting rid of everyone's school debt, medical debt, and providing it all for free, even though that's not what I got when I went through college. I want it to be easier for people. In fact, I'd like to be able to go back to university or college. It's just not something I can ever afford. Okay, let's get to the next bit of Canadian news. Did you know Canada has police? It's actually similar to the United States. Experts say number of police shooting in Canada spectacularly unrelenting. So we always talk, like we hear in the news of the States all the time, of all the police killings and the horror that they do and blah, blah, blah. And again, here in Canada, we're like, oh, that's so much worse than here. We're so much better than Americans. Like it's so much nicer to live here. But what Canadians tend to not realize is that, yes, the United States is the worst. We're the second worst. We're the second worst. So, rate of civilians killed by police annually in selected countries as of 2019. And it's gone up since here in Canada. But yeah, we're generally, when it comes to comparable countries, we're the second worst for police killings. So, it's like, yeah, sure, anyone looks good next to the United States, but, you got Canada, then Australia, and then it's like, okay, then there's almost none. The family of a woman shot by an officer in Edmonton during wellness check says her death was unnecessary as the number of police shootings across Canada show little sign of relenting over the past 4 years. I see my daughter's death as being a result of complete mishandling of the tools available to law enforcement in the application of dealing with mental health issues, the family of the woman, who has not been publicly identified, says in a statement from their lawyer, Tom Engel. Edmonton police have said officers were called for a welfare check. Never call the police for a welfare check. Far, far too often in this country, that leads to tragedy. There were risks of woman may harm herself, so police officers entered the apartment. There was a confrontation and the woman was shot. So, you go somewhere because this person's at risk of harming themselves, and then the police just finished the job for them. It's like, no, put down the weapons. You're good. We'll shoot you. It's unbelievable that, again, police officers should not be going to wellness checks. Family says that had the police approach been gradual and gentle, she would have understood the nature of the visit and would still be alive. A tally compiled by the Canadian Press found police shot at 85 people in Canada between January 1st and December 15th, 41 fatally. It was based on available information from police independent investigative units and reporting from the Canadian Press. This is spectacularly unrelenting phenomenon, says Tempito, a professor of criminology at the University of Alberta and president of the Canadian Sociological Association. This year, the number of police shootings has nearly matched the total from 2022 when 94 people were shot at, 50 fatally. It remains a significant increase from 4 years ago where 61 shootings, 38 of which were fatal. Now, it's not that I necessarily want police officers to have better aim, but that's also kind of concerning. So they're just shooting at people in such a way that half the time it is so wrong in so many ways. Like, what are you shooting at these people for? And most often the weapon, if they had a weapon, it was like a knife or something. Like the police were not in immediate danger. And yet they still shoot the people. It is just... The resulting snapshot shows more officers firing their guns since 2020, when the high-profile murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis spurred global movements urging police accountability and transparency. My words are catching up with my mouth. My brain is catching up with my mouth here. Criminologists say officers need more training and restraint, while the RCMP union says police have been forced to the front lines of Canada's mental health crisis and face increasingly dangerous situations. Part of that is, again, we do not have universal health care in this country. Mental health is not treated the same as physical health. So if we actually got the mental health treatments and facilities and available people out there, the police wouldn't have to be the ones called in these situations. No cop that I've ever dealt with wants to go down this road, says Brian, president of the National Police Federation, which represents about 20,000 Mounties across Canada. And every one of them is impacted momentously by the fact that they've had to discharge their weapon. Officers have the right to safety. That other person, whose name I can't say, says, the police shootings in Canada have been trending upwards for too many years. He says he's particularly concerned about the number of shootings in Alberta. We should not be leading the country in terms of police shootings, he says. This year, Alberta saw 21 police shootings, a rate of 0.45 per 100,000 people, marking a 90% increase from 2020, when there were 11. There were 28 police shootings in Ontario, a rate of 0.18 per 100,000 people, up from 23 the year before. There were 9 in Quebec. All Atlantic Canada saw 6 police shootings, up from 2 the year before. There were 17 shootings in British Columbia, down from 24 in 2022. Saskatchewan and Manitoba also saw decreases. Yeah, we don't need to go over the whole article there. I think there was one secondary article I saw pop up here. Okay. Oh, no, I have the other article for that one. Okay, it's the same article, I think. Oh, no, it's a fuller article. Okay. This one caught my eye when I was going over the other story because I have this one. We'll get to that in a second. Because in this country, we seem to run the risk of, if you don't call the police and you're in a violent situation, then you might end up dying. Or if you do call the police and they don't show up. Okay, let me rephrase this. I have too many wires crossed right now with all these articles. In this country, you run the risk of calling the police and they don't bother to show up to a domestic situation and the person dies. However, you also run the risk that if you call them, that they'll show up and kill the person. What kind of choices are that? Because we have here, enough is enough. There's no reason why police should be responding to mental health crises when the outcome is always the same, lethal. Rest in power, Ziggy. You should still be here. You deserve care and help you needed. So the breaking Winnipeg police just killed 19-year-old international student from Nigeria after being called to deal with his mental health crisis. We want answers. So a family of 19-year-old who died after being shot by police searches for answers. Independent Investigation Unit of Manitoba takes over officer-involved shooting case. The family of the 19-year-old who died after being shot by police over the weekend are searching for answers about what happened to their loved one, who they say was experiencing a mental health crisis at the time of the incident. So this was an international student. He had been in need of help before for mental health issues. Apparently he did have weapons. He had knives on him, but he wasn't. The police shot as soon as they opened up the door. Like, they shot before he had a chance to put down his weapons. There was no attempt at de-escalation. There were other people there, but they weren't hostages. They were just there concerned about him. It should have been dealt with in a far, far different manner because, yeah, the man was armed with 2 knives when officers shot him. Winnipeg Police Chief Danny Smith told reporters during Monday news conference, no information was provided on the other 2 people in the apartment. So after this person was shot, he was taken to hospital in critical condition where he died of his injuries. Not a hostage situation, Police Chief. The Independent Investigation Unit of Manitoba has been notified and taken over the investigation. As soon as there's a death involved, we kind of put the brakes on investigating it. The police chief said it's not our jurisdiction. The man was inside of the suite in the apartment. The other people in the suite are safe and are considered witnesses. The call to police was made by somebody in the suite, but police do not believe it was a hostage situation. I don't get the sense from the original information that the caller was quite concerned. Apparently, there is audio of the shooting that's quite disturbing. And so this is when the police respond. However, women dead after Thunder Bay police don't respond to domestic disturbance call. Ontario police watchdogs say a 21-year-old woman was found dead in Thunder Bay home after officers did not respond to a 911 domestic disturbance call. A special investigations unit said Thunder Bay police got the call at 2 a.m. on December 30th from a home. The SIU says officers did not respond to the scene. The watchdog says when police got a second call, 911 call, also from the house, to cancel the call for service, officers again did not respond. An SIU news release said a third call was made from the house to indicate the woman was dead, and only then did officers respond. Police did not immediately return requests for comment, and an SIU spokesperson said it was early age of investigation and more information will be released in due course. And I think That is this one here. Yes. So more information has been released since I had that article up. Let's see. So in an interview Thursday with Global News, her parents, Vincent and Melanie, say police told them their daughter died with plastic around her neck. Oh. And they believe it was suicide. That's not for them to say. I guess that's one of the parents. Yeah, Melanie said as they await results of the autopsy. We have no comment on the SIU investigation or Thunder Bay police investigation, says Vincent, the woman's father. We've had to start our own investigation. Global News has reached out to Thunder Bay Police Service for comment and has not heard back. The police service has yet to publicly comment on the case. Vincent says the family received supports from First Nations organizations in the region, including Nishapi, Aski Nation, Windigo First Nations Council, and Bearskin Lake First Nations, as they navigate their daughter's death and ensuing investigation into the handling of 911 calls and police investigation. The family tells Global News they'll be patient as the process runs its course. What needs to be made clear is that there has to be an end to institutional racism. In social media posts Thursday, he was critical of the lack of police response and sensitivity involving Indigenous women and girls. Like many young women her age, her parents say the 21-year-old was also styling different looks on various social media platforms. She was very influential, said her father. Lots of girls looked up to her style. Her mom says she graduated high school at 17, then took a year off before attending the college cross access program at Confederation College, which she completed with a bursary for future studies. She was a very good girl, she said. She noted that she had a boyfriend. The woman's father described her as artistic, enjoying painting, singing, in Cree, and square dancing. They awaited their loved ones' remain to be returned from Ontario Corner and planning funeral services for next week. Yeah. Disproportionately, the people who end up dead at police encounters are Indigenous peoples. Extremely disproportionately so. There's other stories of similar things with wellness checks even, where the police show up and it's a young Indigenous woman who ends up getting killed. There's been other stories that I've covered on my channel before. And just like with the police, going to the emergency room, if you're Indigenous, you're less likely to be seen, you're less likely to get the help you need. And you face a lot of discrimination and racial attacks if you go to the hospitals. The racism in this country is very real and is a problem, a huge problem. And it's not looked at nearly enough. Like, everyone sees what's happening over with Israel and Gaza, and you would hope that it would be a moment to make Canadians aware of the situation here and what's been happening here and what is happening here between the Canadian government and Indigenous peoples. Instead, it's making people turn away even more and ignoring it even more because they don't want to admit that type of colonial violence, that type of genocide has happened here and is continuing. The process is continuing. It is an apartheid state here. Because, I have different health care than Indigenous peoples. I get treated differently, it's the conditions that they're forced to live in. We have So Terrell Tailfeathers tweeted this out. The state of Canada requires First Nations to live in poverty as leverage to continue the ongoing theft of land and natural resources. They use poverty as a tool to get us to sign away our inherent sovereignty and the rights to assimilate into Canadian political system. So Nikki Ashton is an MP. And she tweeted out, First Nations should not have to live in poverty in 2024. The federal government needs to do better. First Nations deserve better. I'm proud to stand with Grand Chief Kathy Merrick and her call for an airport in her community.
I'm telling the federal government as I stand here that you need to do better for our people. We should not live in poverty. We should not live as third world country people in our own homeland. This is our country. So you treat us better. You treat the chiefs here better. They deserve better. And they deserve nothing less than any other Canadian in this country. So we give that support to them today. And that hopefully things good will come out of this press conference today. And we will follow up. We are not going to let it go.
A lot of these communities, especially up north, having an airport is life-changing, life-saving. It means that they can get supplies in easier. If there's a medical crisis, they can get out easier. Because there's been a lot of times, especially in some of the more remote areas, where there's been forest fires. And, trying to evacuate them from these very remote communities has been very, challenging. And this is the federal government's responsibility. The federal government is supposed to be the ones that make sure that the housing, the water, and everything is okay on the reservations. And the federal government has failed, absolutely failed. And, there's no other way around it at this time. That was the plan. There's a lot of the land that they're on that's toxic, that's killing them. Their houses are falling apart. They're not building enough houses for the members of the community as the communities grow. There's no jobs for them, but trying to access other places and even just having internet, things of that sort. And it's intentional. The federal government is choosing to do this. Quite often they have money set aside and they don't spend it. Even money that is already budgeted to help First Nations peoples, it just goes unspent. And instead they'll spend taxpayer money to fight claims from residential school survivors or people who couldn't get the health care that they needed, Indigenous peoples who couldn't get the health care they needed. They'll fight them in court and appeal it over and over again instead of just giving them the help they deserve. And even after tweeting that out, so somebody had responded to Nikki saying, I agree. However, First Nations need to do a better job of educating youth and parents. This is not a one-way street any longer. Show me what you are doing to improve your outcomes. And Terrell replied to this. This is victim blaming. With adequate funding and without having to live under the Indian Act, our outcomes would have been much better long ago. It's enforced poverty, and the blame shouldn't be placed on us. The last genocidal residential school closed as recently as the 1990s. Yeah. To put the blame on them after everything this country has done to them is gross. It is just to somehow say that they need to do a better job of educating their youth and stuff, that, it's not a one-way street. Well, it's always kind of been a one-way street with the federal government just doing whatever the hell they wanted. show me what you're doing to improve your condition outcomes. That's like no different than people telling somebody like me on disability that I need to budget better with the money that I have, that it's my responsibility, even though, my entire check goes to rent. But somehow I'm supposed to budget like the $100 left over to pay for all my bills and groceries and stuff of that sort. That's completely on me. The government has nothing to do with that. It's not like the government is to blame for me not being able to budget that $100. It's just gross, the entitlement a lot of people have here in this country. People who don't know what it's like to be abused by this government. Going to get into some lighter stuff in a moment, but let's check chat. Oh, let's check the sandbox. The sandbox. Lynn, a friend who lived in Saskatchewan until he was 22, explained to me that he had no idea there was racism against Black people. Racism was a thing that happened against Indigenous peoples, period. When I grew up, I didn't realize how bad racism towards Black people in Canada was because there weren't many Black people around. So I was never exposed to it in the city that I grew up in. It wasn't until I got into other cities and started hearing from other people that I realized, no, it's an issue here. It's an issue. Because I just, as a child, so naively thought, well, I just live in a whiter area, but others aren't that, will be a bit more mixed, and some areas will be, predominantly Black people, and that's fine, and that's normal, and there's nothing wrong with that. It never occurred to me until I was in high school. Because the high school I went to had a lot of immigrants and newcomers. And by a lot, I mean like 15%. Like a really shockingly low number. And I remember one of the girls coming in and mentioning that the first thing she does when she enters a room, like a classroom full of people, is she scans it and does a race check to see if she's the only one that isn't white. And it just never occurred to me that that would happen or why that would happen until I got older and, talking with people from different cultures. Moving to Toronto, definite eye-opener there, because that is a very, very multicultural city. And just realizing, again, that this idealized vision of what I had of Canada growing up as a kid is nowhere near the truth. Nowhere near. Good for Gabby. Sandy is so pretty. Shh, just saying. Okay, I hear ya. I see ya. Thank you. I think people are talking about religion in relation to the woman that was just felt like she won the championship for putting people's lives in danger by not wearing a mask. My dogs are off. Please ignore all of mine. I was off topic. Well, it's a good thing I read that after I've seen any of the other ones that you were talking about. Good for Gabby. Yes, you are in the sandbox. See, my name is Sandy. This is Left of the Box. So the chat box is now called the sandbox. Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, a lot of people just are not aware of the history of Canada and everything that's gone on. Like most people my age and older, we don't really know that slavery happened here. Like I know now, of course. because I educated myself, but that's not something we were taught. And it's one of those things, it's not that we were taught there was none, we just were never taught there was. And so there's communities out in the East Coast and stuff that are descendants of the slaves that were in Canada. And, you know, a lot of people are unaware that that even happened here, because all we tended to hear about when I was growing up was the Underground Railroad and how they could escape up here to Canada to be free, and life was all good for them then once they got up here and they were safe. Even though once they got up here, they weren't necessarily safe and they weren't necessarily treated well. In fact, they usually weren't. So there's a lot of history we just simply weren't taught, like residential schools. They were touched on, but we weren't really taught about what was happening there. I remember being taught about the First Nations, but what they taught us was, oh, here's the culture before the settlers came over, before colonialism, and the images of them. But it was never taught to us what happened to Indigenous peoples once the settlers got here. It's, yeah. They like to leave out a lot of the bad parts when teaching us about Canada. Let's go on to something a little bit more silly. It's in the title of my other video, so I have to put it. Canada's, unfortunately, probably next premier, Pierre Poilivere. The most rizzless person out there possible, and my God, the videos he makes, his little promo videos are just so beyond pathetic. So from Pierre Poilievre's Twitter account, carpenters live in cars after Trudeau's double housing costs. When the people who build homes can't afford to live in them, the economy is morally bankrupt. Here is how we will bring it home. And as this other person pointed out, so are you proposing an increase to carpenters' salaries? Of course not. He's not actually, in this whole video, not proposing anything that would be actually useful.
Story these. I met a carpenter in Sault Ste. Marie who lives in a parking lot. That's not an unusual story these days. You know, it's crazy to think the guys who build our homes can't afford to live in them.
Now, you notice with all of his videos, and I hope it doesn't get me in trouble, he has music on in the background, and that's to help distract from the fact that he's so utterly boring to listen to. He has no charisma, no show, like he doesn't have a stage presence. He is just so underwhelming in everything he says. Like, we'll get to this next video after this that is just so, we'll explain. You'll see what I mean.
But that's the state of it. After 8 years of Trudeau, housing costs have literally doubled. The average rent when I was housing minister 8 years ago was $950. It's now $2,000.
Okay, so about the rent, a lot of that is because of the conservative premiers of provinces. You know, when Doug Ford got in, he got rid of rent control and did a whole bunch of other things that really helped our rent to skyrocket. So when it comes to housing, that's a multi-tiered government issue. It's something that all municipal, federal, and provincial have to look after. So to blame this all on Trudeau, not exactly accurate, when a lot of the problems we have with rental crisis here in Ontario right now is because of Doug Ford, the conservative.
And rising every single month. The average mortgage payment for a brand new home was $1,400. Now it's $3,500. Just 8 years. In other words, the cost of housing has risen more in the...
I need to speed this up. He is just so Like, who needs a cold shower these days if you need to get out of the mood? You just watch Pierre Poilivere from one of his press reliefs, and then you'd be like, yeah, I'm good, never having sex ever again.
The last 8 years than it had risen in the previous 160 years of Canada's history. There's two reasons for this. One, government money printing flooded the financial system so that
That's not the issue.
wealthy investors could borrow the money, buy up homes, and bid up costs.
Wealthy investors buying homes and putting them on rental markets and making them into Airbnbs and short-term places. That's the problem. So target them. You know, we shouldn't have companies buying up single-family homes.
Now the government spending drives up interest rates on mortgage payments, forcing more people to rent, which means more people are competing for a limited supply of rental properties. Finally, we don't have
properties. I can't really mock him for messing up sentences, considering how often I do that. So that's the most enduring thing about him out of all the stuff that I've seen him, was he messed up that one word. Other than that, he can go to hell.
have enough homes. We have the fewest homes per capita of any country in the G7, even though we have the most land to build on.
Funny thing about that, we have the most homes, well, the least homes per capita in the G7. We still have something like 6 empty homes for every unhoused person in this country. We have enough homes. It's how those homes are being used. Not to mention, we can do far more with zoning and infill and converting old office buildings that aren't being used anymore into different types of housing. Like, there's so much that can be done as opposed to just relying on building new homes, because these new homes that are going up are not affordable homes. They're like mega houses, mansions, and things of that sort that you need to be rich in order to buy. They're not building affordable, starter homes.
Why? Because we have the second slowest building permits. What do you think is the #1 cost input for a newly built home in Toronto, in Vancouver? Anybody want to guess? Is it land?
Anybody want to guess? Anyone? Anyone want to work with me here? Somebody in the audience. Can I get a location? Someone? Anyone? Yes, you. Oh yeah, the Tim Hortons, it's down the street that way. Yeah, you just go down. It's a block. Anyone else want to respond to me? Okay, well, is it the land then?
No. Is it labor? No.
Is
it lumber?
I'll just answer my own questions.
No. What is it? Taxes and permits. Taxes and permits. The consultants, the delays, the permitting fees, the development charges, the lawyers, the consultants, none of which actually builds anything. It doesn't go into the window or the roof or the floor or the wall. It's just paper. We've got to remove the bureaucracy to speed up home building and lower the...
Yeah, that's exactly what you want to do, is just, speed up the process, because what's the worst that could happen? When you speed up permits and things of that sort, and you cut all the red tape, and yeah, what's the worst that could happen? Getting like exploding homes and things of that sort, or homes that are subpar, and yeah.
The cost. I'm going to require cities boost the number of housing completions by 15% per year, or they're going to lose their federal money. If they beat my target, they'll get a bonus. If they miss my target, they'll get a fine. And it will be strictly proportional. They beat my target by 10%, they'll get 10% more money. If they miss it by 10%, they'll get 10% less. They'll get paid like realtors.
This seems like such a junior high level reward system. What's the word? There's incentive system, like junior high level incentive system. Of, you do 10% better, we'll give you 10% more. You do 10% less, we'll punish you by 10%. Like, it seems so childlike, that type of reward system, as opposed to just offering incentives for people to build, affordable homes. Let's go with affordable homes.
On performance. I want the bureaucracies to be thinking about how quickly they can move to get projects like this going. We're going to sell off 6,000 federal buildings and thousands of acres of federal land. And CMHC, you have to deal with CMHC?
Absolutely.
And they take forever to approve project financing, don't they?
Certainly, these days, they certainly do.
How long?
Raj, how long for...
12
It's like, How long? You can answer the... No, you can't answer the question. Let's go to this other person. Can you answer the question? You know, just maybe like a ballpark thing. Maybe I should have asked this ahead of time so that I would know what you were going to say, so that I would ask the right person right away as opposed to looking like an idiot.
5, 6 months. They're supposed to have it done in 60 days to approve these projects. So I'm passing a law that says either they approve these projects in 60 days or the executives will have their pay cut in half. And if they don't get down to the 60-day target within a year, the entire executive's getting fired.
Yeah, I'd be very happy that if politicians didn't do their jobs, they got pay cuts and fired. That'd be nice. Let's do that with the politicians.
I'm going to pass a law called the Welcome to the Real World Act. Because in the real world, if you're a carpenter or a plumber or an electrician, you don't do your job, you get fired. But in the government, you get a bonus when you screw things up. That's not going to happen anymore. We're going to be firing incompetent government executives and holding them to accountability. Because when they block these projects, people go without homes. I want us to have the fastest building permits in the world here in Canada. And we're going to clear the way to do it. That's going to mean that you're going to have affordable homes, and you're going to be building those homes. Bigger paychecks, building homes, more affordable homes for you to live in.
Yeah, he doesn't actually give any concrete solutions to the issues and stuff. And again, it's not... The federal government alone can't solve this problem. They have to work with provincial and municipal governments, which is frustrating, and it takes forever. But he can't just snap his fingers and suddenly, reverse the housing crisis. And it's something that the Liberals and Conservatives have been working towards for years. Like, this is not something the Liberals did. It's something that neoliberalism did. And both Conservatives and Liberals have been, dismantling our healthcare, making the housing crisis an issue. They work together on these things. But let's go to what I was talking about. So we have here's to the extraordinary Canadians. And this was just released a few days ago. And again, he's getting all ready for the election and stuff. Are you telling me that's a real audience? That he's really standing there in front of them? Is this real? Does this look real to anyone that this is a thing? Let's just...
Speaking of experts, we're often told that there are these brainy people who have a higher standard of virtue than the unwashed masses, that they have to decide for all of you and all of us because they just know better. All of us, well, we should just do what we're told. They should decide what we think and say.
Okay. So, this is not a real audience for a Conservative convention, whatever. It's far too diverse, for one thing, considering that this is Canadian Conservatives. But also, this person here has been holding the sign upside down. These people here look bored as fuck. We have somebody wearing a mask, so a dead giveaway, this is not a real Conservative audience. To me, these look like paid actors that he was then superimposed over. Like, these are just all extras.
And what happens with our money. You see, Justin Trudeau really has only two core principles. And that is, these are those principles.
This expression. Oh, God. When they told me this was a paying gig, they didn't tell me what I was here for. And then other people in the front row just like, yeah, I'm just on my phone here. And this guy over here just like, oh, what are you doing? Is that a game? Is that something interesting? Can I look too? Because this is boring as fuck.
Principles. One, that the state should control everybody. And two, that he should control the state. Right? But who...
This woman here hasn't changed her expression at all. Just still like, oh God, I can't believe I'm here.
Who are these angels? Who are these angels from above that he has hired to run our lives? Right? They are basically people who want to control the decisions that should rest in the hand of everyday people. But how can we be sure that the people are wise and virtuous enough to decide for themselves? Aren't they just ordinary people? Ladies and gentlemen, I have held about 120 rallies in the last year and a half.
Then one would hope that he'd be a little bit more practiced at talking to an audience. Like trying to rev up people with this? Like he's not winning the crowd over.
Since I launched my leadership campaign, and I have a policy that at each and every one I stay until every person who wants to meet me has shaken my hand. I have met, yes, that's right, and I'll do it tonight. I have met these ordinary people, and I can tell you they are extraordinary. The waitress who balances 12 plates on a tray and serves.
This woman here, this young woman, is like folding up her sign now too, and still like, are we done yet? Are we done? Like, does anyone look like they're actually enthusiastic to be there?
12 tough customers at once, works a double shift, and comes home with enough energy to teach her kids math and balances her budget on a minimum wage salary. She is not ordinary. She is extraordinary.
First of all, nobody can do that. Nobody can raise children on minimum wage and balance their budget. That's not a thing that's possible.
The farmer who masters the sciences of sky and soil to bring food from his field to your fork is not ordinary. He is extraordinary. The electrician who captures lightning from the sky, runs it through a copper wire to illuminate this room.
Sorry, what was that? Now, you guys can't see the subtitles properly on here. Let's just can I make that bigger and viewable? There we go. Sorry, what did he just say there?
The electrician who captures lightning from the sky, runs it through a copper wire to illuminate this room and light up the world is not ordinary. He is extraordinary.
Yeah, because he'd be a god. Like Zeus level power there to just capture the lightning from the sky and throw it into some copper wires. That's exactly what electricians do. They're gods.
These extraordinary people have the wisdom and the virtue to be masters and not servants in their own country.
Looks like this woman here is checking her, like actually looking at her wrist, like checking the time to be like, are we done yet?
That is my purpose, to put them back in charge of their lives, to live in a country where once again the government is a servant and not the master, where the people chart their own course.
This guy who's been holding the sign upside down over here and is just using it as a fan now. Like, are we done? Are we done? Like, who would make this and think it's a good idea to post on social media?
Author their own story in the freest country in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the common sense of the common people, united for our common home. Your home, my home, our home. Let's bring it home.
I'm sorry. Your home, my home. Let's bring it home. He's such a joke. And the saddest thing is he's probably going to be the next premier. But the thing is that wasn't the first time he's used this idea of electricity being captured from the sky.
The electrician who captures lightning from the sky, runs it through a copper wire to illuminate this room and light up the world is not ordinary. He is extraordinary. The electrician that captures the electricity from the sky and runs it through a copper wire to light up this room, he is extraordinary.
The electrician who captures lightning, runs it through a copper wire to light up your home, tames the most fierce force in nature to make us all comfortable and happy and illuminate this room. He is
Tames the fiercest force in nature by just reaching up and grabbing that lightning. That's how you do it. You just, you got to make sure that you have the right gloves on. And then you do this really hard too. Get that static electricity shock going. And then you go. And you capture the lightning like that.
is not ordinary. He is extraordinary.
The electrician who's able to capture lightning and bring it through copper wire to bring us lighting. He is not ordinary. He is extraordinary.
The electrician.
He focused roomed that. Like, he did a focus group to get that. It is so bad. Like, does he seriously not know how electricity is made? That he thinks, oh yeah, they just reach up and they capture it from the sky. That's how you do it. You stand on a really tall building with your electrical gear, your uniform and stuff. You stand on a really tall building during a storm, and you just capture all the lightning as it's coming in, and you store it so that you can send it through all the copper wires. That's how electricity is made in Canada. Now, actually, I'm going to use that now with Americans. When we talk about like how we get electricity, be like, "Oh, you Americans, you're so antiquated. Here in Canada, we actually just capture lightning. Like, that's how we get our electricity. Totally renewable that way." And there's going to be Americans that believe me. It's like this completely uncharismatic, rizzless person is most likely going to be the next premier of this country. But I just want to like go back to this one shot here. I'll show it to you in a sec. Just want to make sure that I get to the right spot. Because I don't know if it showed up. Oh, I'm in the wrong one. Okay. Don't know if it showed up the way that I had the screen cropped. Oh yeah, you can still barely see it, but it's there. So how do we know this audience isn't real? It's like we have this sign here, it's upside down. This person's been on the phone. Sure, she might be taking pictures of this guy, but do you really need, like, wouldn't you want to be paying attention if you're in the front row? And considering that she has her phone out almost the entire time, this woman here looking like all of them look like they'd rather be anywhere else than there. You're telling me this is an enthusiastic crowd that's going to help them become premier. Unfortunately, he will probably become premier, and that is partly because Justin Trudeau is so bad. That people are so sick of his arrogant, privileged, entitled, smarmy face. Like, it's just... So they're going to go the polar opposite with somebody who has absolutely no charisma, no intelligence, who's a career politician that tries to pass him off as just one of the good old guys, and, you know, is a millionaire and has been a lifelong politician. He got his pension in his 30s. Like, he's been living good on the Canadian dime. He has much better health care than any of us. He has a housing allowance that is probably more than I get in the entire year. Yet he's just one of the average workers, so much so he knows how that lightning is got. It's got from holding your hand up and capturing lightning. All I can think is that he did this in front of a focus group to try to figure out, like, what phrases really sells the public. What do them humans actually talk about? Trying to like just who can look at this ad and think it's anything real? It was just so ridiculous. Let's check chat. Lynn, yeah, I mean that lighting looks totally normal. It's like it looks like he was just superimposed on a green screen. And everyone there was just paid extras that they actually had to film at a different time and location because they didn't want to tell them what it was all about. And they're like, okay, now just kind of vaguely look here for a little bit and we'll give you some applause lines and clap here and don't do that. But yeah, my dogs are goth. It doesn't look real at all. No, it doesn't. And, you know, conservatives have used paid actors before. Doug Ford used paid people to be at some of his rallies when he was first starting to run to be premier. It's known thing that they do this. Shade Dragon, paid actors, they're not AI. I studied the picture and I didn't find anything like really, really off that would indicate it's AI. I don't rule it out. I don't rule it out. But I wasn't finding anyone with like two heads or, you know, a floating head or, you know, something that would really say, oh yeah, this is definitely AI. So that's what I'm thinking. It's like paid actors at a different time and location, like on a soundstage type thing. Morbius Dragon, politicians everywhere should get paid whatever their national minimum wage is. If that happened, though, I'll bet they would start doing what's best for us instead of themselves. Yeah. My dogs are goth. They lit him up like he is a stage Jesus. Oh. Zero PE, pandering, and virtue signaling. Yep, that's all he does. He's really bad for that. And it's working. The population wants a populist, and he's the only one that is doing it. Because the leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh, totally, he's losing. We are losing people from the NDP, the working class that would normally vote NDP. They're looking more towards Pierre Poilivere. But never let yourself think for one instant that people are moving strictly from the NDP to conservative, because if you look at the graphs, you see a stark change with the liberals and the conservatives, and you can see exactly it's people who are no longer voting liberal are voting conservative. It is totally people switching between those two parties. That's the problem. Schmeegly, that's not how electricity works. Yeah. Yeah, you don't just grab lightning from the sky and put it through copper wires. That's not, you mean electricity doesn't work like that? All those wind turbines I see out there, they're not there to generate lightning bolts that then shoot into the ground and into the copper wires that then light up all of the system. You basically just like, no, electricians are gods. They are gods. They're like Zeus. Lynn, how many takes did that spin take? Yeah, this is so rehearsed, so practiced. Like, there's nothing authentic about him. And it's hard to, like, get a crowd energized and revved up and going when you're not being authentic. Shade Dragon, our home, please. Do you think any of these people can afford homes? Yeah, not with his plan in place either. Zero PE. I'm no Trudeau fan, but that was weak as fuck. LOL. Is this dude really running against Trudeau? LOL. He is. And in polling, he's way above Trudeau right now. If there was an election right now in Canada, the Conservatives would win with him as the Prime Minister. That's where we're at right now. Pierre Poilivere would be Prime Minister of Canada if there would be an election right now. Yeah, despite everything, despite his complete rizzlessness, he can still somehow ah. Zero PE. This is totally some putting fingers shit to say that same speech everywhere and think he's killing it. Yeah, like I'm pretty sure he had that phrase like focus group tested to see like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. Let's go with that one. Like, does this make me sound like I know what I'm talking about? It is just so ridiculous. Schmeekly, and they have the nerve to slam Trudeau for teaching kindergarten. If nothing else, at least Trudeau had actual jobs before he got into being a politician. Whereas, you know, Pierre has been a politician his entire fucking life. Shade Dragon, he's so dull he couldn't cut butter. The boring company could go through a mountain with him. Yeah. Let's see, how are we for time? It's getting late. And I know Letter Hack starts at 10. I'm hoping not to step on his toes this time. I don't want to be in here too late. I hope it wasn't too disconnected, this stream, having that interruption with, you know, it disconnecting after a really brilliant rant, if I do say so myself. It's something people can also do in the comments, and you can go back to my other live streams, and this would be really helpful, is let me know what you would like clipped. If there was a certain segment or something that you think, oh, that would make a nice video, just, you know, remind me of what would make a good segment to clip out. So that I can post it to my channel, because I keep on trying to remember that I need to go back and do that and then completely forgetting. Also, once I'm done a live stream, the only thing I want to do is nothing. Just go and do nothing. So, yeah. Okay, let's just go over something really quick and silly that I saw that I'm like, oh, this is nightmare fuel. Video image emerges of massive crowds crowding at Toronto Union Station. So Toronto Union Station is the subway. It is the Union Station is like the main subway hub there. And let's see. No, I think we have, there we go. Get rid of the music. That was New Year's Eve at Union Station. Wow. I would feel so claustrophobic with that. Like, just, I would not be able to handle a crowd like that. Like, not at all. And then you follow it up with this.
There were some frightening moments.
Warning after e-bike bursts into flame on Toronto subway. Could you imagine what would happen? You see, this e-bike just wasn't storing the electric lightning bolts properly. You know, the lightning bolts just missed the main battery part and hit a different part, and then it caused the electric bike to go up in flames. Could you imagine being here if that were to happen? Oh my God. It's just like, wow. That is some nightmare fuel right there. Like, the subway should never get that crowded. I don't know when it comes to logistics around that, how you can stop that from happening, but especially when it comes to big events like that, there needs to be other ways, more staggered ways for people to leave so that you're not crowding a subway like that. Because one incident, one stampede, and you would have such a tragedy, like beyond tragedy. I just looking at that crowd makes me just want to go, ah, just no, I can't. Yeah, that is nightmare fuel right there. Nope, thank you for the $2. Just curious, do you do any slinky tricks? Not so much other than this. That's pretty much it. There's a channel I watch on YouTube, Slinky Josh, I think it is. Is it Slinky Josh? Yes, Slinky Josh. He does some really wild things with slinkies. He's going to have music on these. Let's just go videos. Okay, it's off. He does some really cool stuff. And I would love to learn how to do that stuff. But yeah, check out his website, Slinky Josh. Or not website, his YouTube page. Because he does, yeah. I've seen his tutorial videos on how to do this, and I'm still just completely clueless how he pulls it off. And it has to be like the right type of slinky and stuff, but there's like all these different like slinky competitions and stuff, and it looks all really cool. And I think considering how many slinkies I have, I should be able to do that. But yeah, it's like magic. I see him do that and it's like magic. And then if you get like on a dark stage with black lights and stuff and see it glowing and whatnot, so cool. My dogs are goth. You should clip some of your comments about PP for some YouTube shorts. What you said was funny. Yeah. It requires me to have to go back and like rewatch the entire thing and then be like, okay, this is a good part to clip. And then I cut it, I slice it, but then realize that there's no like good end time and all that sort of like, it takes a bit of work. But if there was like segments that I knew people really wanted, like I know I want to clip the one about the cop who got demoted but still makes over $100,000. I want to clip that one. There, like, I know in my head there are ones that I want to clip. It's just a matter of getting around to doing that. I'm going to be taking a week off of making new content. Probably not next week, but the following week, and that will be my Christmas break. So that I can just maybe focus on making clips and focus on my art. I just want a solid week of doing artwork. Also, I need to start getting into an actual routine, which is so hard when you're not forced to. when you're this ADHD and autistic to just put yourself into a routine when you're not forced to because of a job or something, extremely difficult. But I want to because I need to start working out again, like building muscle and stuff. And it's actually because I confirmed with my doctor I do have osteoporosis and I need to go in and see a specialist to see if we can build up my bone mass again. But building muscle actually is really helpful for that. And also I like it. I liked working out when I did it regularly. I liked the results. I liked having, a little bit of muscle here as opposed to this tiny little arm. I actually had impressive guns at one point and I want to get back there. So I need to start doing a routine where I wake up at a certain time, I do my workout, and then, maybe work on some video content creating, then work on some art. Like I need to get into an actual work routine, which is so hard to do just for yourself. Shade Dragon, I don't want to smell a different person every time I turn my head. Yeah, being touched by that many people all at once, because you can't avoid being touched. You're being touched by so many people. And I don't like being touched in general, especially not from strangers. God, no, not from strangers. So to be smushed in with that many people with all sides of my body being touched no. And then what happens if I get squished in between like a whole bunch of really tall people too? Oh, yeah, people would freak out in that situation. They'd die. Like there's just no way. And what do you do if you have like disabilities? Like you have to be in a wheelchair or you use a walker or a cane and try to navigate that level of crowd. Like, it's again one of those things that people don't realize. People with disabilities, they often can't go to events like a New Year's countdown or something of that sort because navigating those crowds, people aren't considerate, you know. People would block the way, people move people in wheelchairs without their consent, hang things on the back of their wheelchair sometimes. It's just really ridiculous stuff that people seem to think is okay, which is totally not. But if you had a walker and stuff or needed a cane to try to navigate through that crowd, you can't. And so a lot of times you have to consider that if you're in that situation, and then you're denied the opportunity to go out and celebrate those. Like I've been to some New Year's celebrations in public, nowhere near as crowded as that. Oh God, no. And sometimes it's fun to just be part of that community. And I can handle it sometimes, but again, not that crowded. I would never be able to handle that crowd. Monope, if anybody could grab lightning out of the sky, maybe it's Slinky Josh. You know what? Considering how magic he is, it wouldn't surprise me. My dogs are goth. Geez, nice demotion. Yeah. Went over that in the video about the cop who, was threatening to kill an ex or something of that sort, a domestic dispute. And so he got demoted for a couple years. And in the news article, they said, so he's losing $26,000 a year because of this, but they didn't bother to say what his salary was. And so I Googled it, and he's on the sunshine list, of course, because he's a police officer and they make a ridiculous amount of money. And it turns out, even with that demotion, he's still making over $100,000 a year. Good for Gabby. I missed the Glebe segment. You can actually see that on a different stream. So I did that on the stream that I originally set up, and then my system crashed. So it's there. Apparently it's all intact. It crashed after I was done the stream, so good timing there. So just go to my YouTube channel, go to the live, and you'll see it there. It was the first one of these that I did. Really got mad. Got mad. Looney Tunes 9000s thinks that I should clip that segment. It's tempting. That one I think is definitely clippable. Shamigli, Slinky Josh for Energy Minister. Yeah. Okay. I think I'm about done for the day. I just, having that interruption in the stream really threw me off. But I still have lots of stuff to cover, so Sunday, 6 p.m., I'll be doing their live stream, because there's a lot that I missed out on covering because of that interruption in my live stream. I don't know. It helps spread the word. You know, I'm looking forward to the day where I actually have like 3-digit viewers. That would be nice. To one of my streams. I don't even think I've broken 50 at this point. So, you know, baby steps. We'll get there. We'll get there. I have a great community. You guys are great. So, you know, we'll get there. It helps if you plug my content in other leftist streams in their chats and stuff, in their stand boxes. Because I'd be more than happy to go on some of these other shows. I'm still about $70 away from paying off Frodo's vet bills. So any help you can give me with that would be great, because I've had to take them all to the vet since. Luckily, I was able to get them into the not-for-profit vet, so that's Frodo, Abernathy, and Lanier. Luckily, Abernathy and Lanier both seem to have pulled through. They're cat viruses, they're colds. I wonder if they had COVID. I'm getting concerned about Frodo again, because he's just not eating the way he should. And his behavior has started to change because he thinks every time I'm approaching him now, I'm going to put him in the pet taxi or shove pills down his throat. So before, when he was sleeping on the bed, I could just walk into the bedroom and go and snuggle up and give him some pats and kisses and stuff. But now whenever he sees me approach, he gets all skittish and then jumps under the bed, and it kind of breaks my heart. I just want him to be better. He needs to just eat. Just eat. That's all he needs to do. Speaking of my art, if you're new to my channel, please go check it out at SandeeLovas.com to see what kind of art I do, which, again, I want to focus on for a little bit. There's some drawings I have in my head that I want to get out. Of course, if you can always become a patron. That helps my channel out. Well, not my channel so much as it helps me out. I also have an Amazon wish list linked in the description box below. I think I linked it. Yeah, I had to scramble to get this stream up and going. Every little bit helps. Thank you so much to the people who have already become a patron, who have purchased things off my wish list. You know, I understand, you know, the pinch everyone is in when it comes to finances, so it means the world to me if you're able to put me into your budget, but please, only if you can. I don't want people to sacrifice things in your life to get things off my wish list or to sign up to become a patron. You know, think of yourself first. But I do have a variety of stuff on my wish list. Some stuff for my studio here, my art supplies, stuff for my cats, or even just a bag of M&Ms because I like M&Ms, and it's a small, it's a nice way to show appreciation if that's what you want to do. Or you can just share the stream. Like, subscribe. That doesn't cost anything. Mention me to other lefty content creators. You know, get the word out there that Left of the Box is a thing. My dream would be to be on the Majority Report, you know, a regular occasional guest co-host. That would be amazing. I know that they're looking for a way to increase their subscribers, so what would be a better way than to, you know, bring on somebody with a little bit of a different perspective, you know, a non-binary, queer, polyamorous person with living with disabilities, and can bring that Canadian perspective and humor onto the show. Like, I think it'd be a good match. And I'm getting practiced with these YouTube live streams now. I'm like a natural when it doesn't crash. And I can prove I'm liking this because if you see all the thumbnails from my live streams, you see I'm smiling in all of them. And those are random frames that the YouTube picks up that I select from. So, yeah, there's that. And I don't want to ramble too much anymore, so let's just... So Sunday, 6 p.m. I'll get to those other clips that I was wanting to get to about Zionists and all the horror that's happening. And some other things, and I'm sure more news is going to happen between now and then. But yeah. I think I would help subscriptions to the Majority Report if I was a regular occasional guest co-host. They wouldn't even have to pay me. Shh. Thank you everyone for coming out. Thank you for putting up with my tech issues. Thank you to all the wonderful mods. I hope it's not too much problems for you in my chat. 10 p.m. Letterhack. Go check out his channel. He's doing some more book readings of his stuff. And he has a nice soothing voice to listen to right before you try going to bed. I have to figure out if I'm going to go for a walk. Because it's 9 p.m. I might still go out for my walk. We'll see. And yeah, I need to stop my rambling and just sign off. Unfortunately, no kitty cats came to jump on my lap while I was doing this. So, yeah, anyway. Salut, à la prochaine. Thank you for watching and stay tuned. I'm Sandy, wishing your tomorrow is better than your today.